You don't have to like reality, but you should always accept reality. You should always accept a model that's more authentic, more true, closer to objective reality, instead of some fuzzy delusional shit. When you start putting a few fuzzies in your head, then it's easier to make rationalizations and have more delusions and a falsified worldview. And now you're supposed to be a good investor with that? You want to ignore reality, and now you're going to make great investment decisions or other high-quality life choices? How the f would that happen?
Really good to make sure to reflect on what you did wrong too, because fighting's a perfect example. Guys will try to blame their team, blame their coaches, and sometimes there might be a real factor, but it's always important to take where you up. Same thing with break for girlfriend. Oh, she's a this, that. Well, where did you up? Girls are leaving you. Maybe you're not doing something right. If you're losing money, maybe you're not investing something right. There are, of course, outside factors, but it's always important to look where you up. And in most situations, if something went wrong, you up somewhere.
Attention, current and future entrepreneurs. My 12-week entrepreneurship-focused masterclass starts in a matter of days. I'm Derek Moneyberg. We opened up a few more spots for one-on-one interviews. If you've ever wondered what it's actually like when you become a Moneyberg client, I'm inviting you to claim one of these limited spots right now. If your application is approved, you'll join my head coach for a strategy session where you'll be able to know more about you, your goals, and how to be able to leverage our experience to help you reach those goals even faster. After the call, if we think you'd be a great fit to be inside one of our programs, we'll invite you to become a client. If you're serious about your success, click that link, request your interview, and secure your spot before we end this opportunity.
Yeah, it's losing a fight can almost feel like a death or something. It can be absolutely tragic, but I think like anything, you have to just bounce back, and you can't sit in bed and cry and say, why me, poor and dwell. It's like if a girl dumps you, are you going to sit around and cry, or are you going to go and make yourself a better man, Or if you lose $1 million in the stock market one day, are you going to cry about it, or are you going to go make more? So it's the same thing, you might need a couple days to not get out of bed and be miserable, but then ultimately you got to get back to the gym and just start training, forcing yourself back, forcing yourself to improve and be better. And when I had those devastating losses, I was always back in the gym within a couple days. I know some guys disappeared for months. Hard to get them out of their house, and it's just like, I've had guys you had to go to their house and drag them out finally, they slip into deep depression. I've seen guys do the same thing when they lose girlfriends, and it's just not the right approach. It's just that mental toughness of you're going to move forwards there no matter what. Because life's not perfect. Bad things are going to happen sometimes.
It's two different thoughts about it. From my perspective, when I have bad things, shitty things happen in my life, shitty things happen in everybody's life. It's just so that's part of life, and like any mature adult, just be like, well, yeah, that's life, and it's not pragmatically useful to sit around and just feel sorry or feel bad about things that you don't have control over. Like, the sooner you can come to acceptance of reality, you don't have to like reality, but you should always accept reality. You should always accept a model that's more authentic, more true, closer to objective reality, instead of some fuzzy delusional shit. So when you start putting a few fuzzies in your head, then it's easier to make more rationalizations and have more delusions and a falsified worldview. And now you're supposed to be a good investor with that. So you want to ignore reality, and now you're going to make great investment decisions or other high quality life choices. How the f would that happen? So I have to remind myself still on occasion, like, why I don't have to like reality, but I should always accept reality. I might not like this moment, but the sooner I get to acceptance, then I can start building something again, or thinking, all right, what are the assets we have to work with here to make a better outcome? What's the best we can do with the current circumstance to make things better? And then it might not be overnight. It might be you might have a significant setback. Think about that like a car accident, or you slip on the old people slip on the ice and break a hip or some shit, and you wish that didn't happen, but you're not going to fix it overnight. Or a bad car accident, you might not be dead, but you might be pretty up for a while, and you can't just go fix it overnight. It's just like, all right, so I'm going to be up for a while here. How do I make the best of it? And I think another thought, and this might sound like a joke, and I don't mean it that way, or it might sound a little too dark, and I don't really mean it that way. I just think it's true. Is like, well, you're going to be dead soon enough. So what do you want to do with the time that you have left? You want to sit around, like how much time do you want to schedule being like depressed, or angry, or anxious, or whatever other negative emotion you might feel? What would be the optimal amount of time to sit around like a depressed bitch? So you're probably going to spend some time being a bit depressed, but like the closer we get that to zero, that's probably the optimal number is 0, you know? As close as we can get to 0, that'd be great. And, you know, a great way to get over your depression is just accept reality as it is and take inventory of like, all right, this is my current circumstance. It's not ideal. I wish it was different. What can I start doing right now to make it a bit different? What can I do to make it better in the future? So I think acceptance is very important, not in a hippie way that some people talk about it, but just in a very practical way. Like the sooner you can accept reality, the sooner you can start, you know, building a better reality. So when you start putting, you know, fuzzies and delusions in your head, it's never good. How many delusions do you need to get through your day? How much illusion do you need to get through your days? Just accept things as close to as factual as your senses and your mental capacities will allow you to perceive it. The closer your mental model is to like objective reality, the better off you're going to be.
It's really good to make sure to reflect on what you did wrong too, because fighting's a perfect example. Guys will try to blame their team, blame their coaches, and you know sometimes there might be a real factor, but it's always important to take where you up. You know, same thing with like brave girlfriend. Oh, she's a this that. Well, where did you up? Why are if girls are leaving you, maybe you're not doing something right. If you're losing money, maybe you're not investing something right. There are of course outside factors, but it's always important to look where you up. And in most situations, if something went wrong, you up somewhere.
100% agree. And in addition, you know, even when your brain says it's not my fault, it is your responsibility. Whatever it is that you're saying, whatever the thing is in your life, that if it's important enough for you to be a pussy and say it's not my fault, it's not my fault, but that may be true, but it's your responsibility to fix that shit. Nobody else is going to fix that shit for you. It is your responsibility to fix that shit. If you didn't care enough about it, then you wouldn't be saying it's not my fault. If it didn't matter to you on an emotional level, you wouldn't be saying that. If it didn't feel like a setback in some way, you wouldn't be saying that. So just as soon as you have that thought, you should have that next thought of like, all right, it may not be entirely my fault, but what could I do to make it better? And what could I do to avoid a situation like this in the future? What could I do to avoid and what other situations might be similar to this that given the lesson that I'm learning now, I could avoid that shit too. So I think it's very useful to, and I'm happy you brought that up, I think it's very useful to have a little self-reflection and self-criticism of like, you know, what can I do better?
Yeah, doesn't mean you want to completely nitpick yourself either. You don't want to just nitpick everything, but you need to look and reflect what you did wrong. And ultimately, like, you know, everyone here is a man. No one really gives a about us. You know, women, doesn't matter. We're men. People really only care about the results. That's just the hard truth.
I've said that for many years that, you know, if maybe in your teenage years, maybe in your 20s, somebody said, oh, you got so much potential, so much potential. On a man's 30th birthday, that's the moment that nobody ever again is going to speak about your potential. On a man's 30th birthday, you never hear again, he's got so much potential. You've been hearing a lot about your potential recently, Yuval? But
mother still calls.
So, you know, when a man turns 30, you never again hear about your potential. Just, you know, what have you done so far? And the world will have a strong bias towards what have you done recently. And that's how a man's going to be judged. And that's not inappropriate. That's fine. That's life. All right. So everybody has their burden. You know, after 30, a man has to be fully responsible. After 30, a woman can.
Better hope she's already married.
Hold hands and reminisce. But that's how life is.
So there's a story that I love, but I want to get the facts right. So obviously, I'm going to hand it over to Jake. But Jake, you spoke of a few fights where you won after, I think, having broken your arm or sustained a severe injury, which I think really speaks to, and I actually asked you about it Beat Down Boot Camp.
Yeah.
And when I asked you about it, you said you won the fight, and you told me something that was just mind-blowing, very simple. Yeah, it would have been stupid not to win the fight.
Yeah.
And, which you know sounds humorous and funny, but it's actually
I've already my arm up. Yeah, I've already my arm up. I think it was actually a jiu-jitsu match, but it was a really high level one. It was like the world competition.
Yeah.
And this guy he was a nemesis with my coach. Their coaches were nemesis, so it was important I won the match. And he threw an arm bar on so quick that I took my arm up really bad, but it popped so quick and I pulled it out. So it's like, well, there's no reason to tap now, and now I have my arm up, so now I have to win the match. You know, went on to win that match, and then, you know, ended up doing really good in the tournament. So if you're already hurt, you might as well keep going. You can't no reason to stop at that point. And there's fights too, it's common to have like a broken hand or be cut up. Once you're out there, you gotta keep going. It's like when you're competing at that level, you gotta be willing to sacrifice. And that's part of the reason why I retired, honestly. I still physically felt good. I just kind of felt like I lost that desire. There were fights like when I fought Dan Henderson, I think I got knocked down like 3 times the first round, but I was literally willing to die out there. My last couple fights, it kind of felt like I lost that. And it's like, okay, if I'm not willing to go out in this cage and die, maybe I shouldn't be doing this sport. And it's a crazy way of looking at it, but it's such extreme sport. You kind of got to have that mindset to be winning world titles.
Yeah, I don't know that you and I ever had the conversation in depth, but I seen something on Instagram once upon a time. There's a quote, somebody quoting you like that to be a champion level fighter, you have to be willing to die in the cage, and you have to be willing to kill your opponent. And if you're missing either of those two things, you might want to think about retiring, something like that.
Yeah, 100% agree. Before my fights, I would get myself mentally psyched up, where it sounds up, but I'd be really ready to kill the guy, and I'd be willing to die. But you're literally going in there for war. It's not a sport. It's not a game. Like, fighting's the most extreme sport out there. You're going out there, and you have to be willing to do that. And I really was. And that's towards the end of my career, I started feeling like my life was good. I had money, girlfriend, life was great, girls everywhere. I didn't quite have that desire. And I'm like, maybe I should step away from the sport. It's like you got to get yourself in that mindset. It's not easy to do, but if you're doing something that extreme, you shouldn't be doing it if you can't do that. If you're not willing to kill the guy you're fighting, you shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean you want to. Of course, you don't want to kill him, but some of these guys might want, but most guys don't want to, but you have to be willing to do that if you're fighting them.
Do you also think this is a generational thing, that this is now much less in the forefront of like the newer generation, that this like killer instinct would fight for something?
I think the fighters, there's still some of the killer instinct in fighting as a whole. I think generations have gotten a lot weaker. Every generation you see get a little weaker, which is it's kind of sad. I don't know what to do about it. I think fighting is one of the last places where there still is toughness. Something I noticed that happened fast, I used to go to Japan like 20 years ago. I started going there to fight, and they were just such killer warriors. And they've lost that spirit already in 20 years. I mean, they're not saying all Japanese people, but they had what do they call it? I think Bushido, where they're out there willing to die in the cage, and they're complete warriors. And you started seeing in one generation, I could see they don't have that killer spirit anymore. There's not famous Japanese fighters anymore. It's completely died out. To see something die in one generation in Japan, in my lifetime, such a fast, drastic change, is pretty crazy. And I don't know if you guys know Japanese history. It's just they're some of the toughest people ever. Such a small island, just brutal, and it seems like they're completely falling off now.
I truly recommend this program to anybody looking to become the best version of themselves and accumulate massive wealth and success in the process. By going through this program, I have noticed myself that I have held on to a lot of beliefs which served my parents when they immigrated to the United States from Mexico, but they threatened to keep me stuck. For example, the biggest belief that I held on to was holding on to my money as long as possible instead of investing it to create even more wealth and opportunities. I used to think that this made sense, but then I realized because of inflation, the buying power will never be higher than it is right now. The best part of this program is the accountability and the amount of work you put in. No one can want your success more than you. Also, hearing other success stories from fellow cohort and seeing how they're winning in life just inspires me that much more to just keep pushing forward to get what I want out of life. I'm confident that everything I learned by the end of Moneyberg mentoring will be highly beneficial to me in creating the perfect life that I envision. Once again, I highly recommend this program to those who want to become the best version of themselves and to do very well in life.